I'm Jim Martin, I'm an alcoholic. I'm nursing this foot and ankle problem, so I'm probably going to be leaning on this a lot and hugging it, but trust me, I am sober. I was when I left home. Oh man, it's great to be here. Great to see so many old friends, faces I haven't seen in a lot of years. I thank Beth for inviting me. I'm always honored to come to this group. This group has just added so much to the AA community in Moore County, and especially dedication to service. And and you're one of the few people that have a speaker meeting too. I think you're the only group that has a weekly speaker meeting. I know speaker meetings are hard to pull off, and takes a little more work than most. And I'm appreciative that you do that. I have, I've been in this area 18 years, going on 19 years. I've spoken here several times. Last time I went back and checked this afternoon. I thought it was just a few years ago. It was actually in 2011. The time sort of got away from me, and I guess the good news is that's sort of beyond the statute of limitations. So I don't really have to tell the same story I did last time. Maybe I can make it more interesting. But some of you will appreciate this. I drank for a long time. I've been sober for a long time. So I got a long story. It might not be a good story and it might not be interesting, but I got a lot of it. So the challenge is always for me to, what is it I'd really like to tell people or leave them with that might make some sense to them. And, I struggle with that a little bit. I'll go ahead and say the most important thing, and that way I'm sure I won't forget it, that I'm going to say, and that is, I am profoundly grateful to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous for what it's done for me and my family and my friends. The depth of my gratitude is I could never really express. I came here, got a whole second chance at life. I have one daughter, two daughters and a grandson in the program. My oldest daughter I went year before last to Raleigh and gave her, Jeff back there went with me and gave her 20-year chip. I took her to her first meeting. My other daughter's got, 8 years. I got a grandson who's 25 that'll have 3 years this month. So, man, I got a big gratitude list. Y'all would be really lucky to have my gratitude list. And it's big, and I owe it all to this program, and God working through the program, or however you want to look at it. We'll look at it different ways. But it's really been good to me. I mentioned I'd been here. I'll say something about my present situation. I moved here in 2002, I guess 6 years ago. My wife and I had a second home up in the mountains, Asheville area, and she had a second career as a real estate agent, and we got involved in a development, building out a luxury townhome development. So for the last few years, I'm here about half the time, and I'm up there about half the time. And I have an AA community up there too, so I just kind of phase in and out. I'm in AA here and then AA there, and I disappear, and people have, learned when I disappear, I'm not drunk. I'm just at the other place. And, I play one town against the other in terms of the types of problems they're dealing with. I tell them, up in the mountains, a problem is somebody stole my moped. In Pinehurst, my problem is it was cart paths only all week. Yeah, it's just radically different. And I have, I've had a lot of interest since I've been here. You know, today I've got a few sponsees, small number. They're great people. They don't consume a lot of time. I love being with them. And I've done a lot of things in service. I'll talk about that later maybe. My overriding interest in the last few years has been AA history, the history of alcoholism, and AA history. It's been a real interest. About 10 years ago, I started a history study group here. I'd been part of one in Richmond, and I started one here. And some of you remember Douglas. Douglas was part of it. He got sick and went through a long illness and died. And I just sort of dropped it, and then 3 years ago, I came back to it and started a group. And we've got, I mentioned this, you know, I'm not recruiting, but I like to make people aware of it. We've got a group of 8 or 10 people. We meet once a month, but you have to do the homework. We have reading every month. And we've got 8 or 10 people that are committed to do it. And it runs in like an 18-month cycle. It's a real commitment in time. It's not something many people are willing to do or you know, ever really want to do. I don't think it keeps me sober necessarily, but it has, it greatly improves and amplifies my appreciation for Alcoholics Anonymous, you know, as an enterprise and what it's done for people. And, so if anybody somewhere along the line develops an interest, all you have to do is just email me and let me know, and I'll talk to you about the next cycle that we run. And I'll try to leave about 10 minutes at the end, and I'll give you a little tutorial. I'll tell you, I'll save all of your years of study and give you about 10 minutes of my perspective. And I hesitate to do it, but I'm going to do it at the end, and that way it's too late to throw me out. You'll have to listen. I grew up in a place up on the Virginia border called Roxborough, Person County, Roxborough. Roxborough has had 2 well-known people that came from there. One was Enos Country Slaughter, the Hall of Fame baseball player. And the other one was a guy named Wallace something. He was like a co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous. I always have to get Wallace. We do share that. And, before I move on, I will say one thing about Roxborough. I always have to say something when he's here. When I was in Richmond, I worked in a factory there for a while. Well, I worked in a lot of factories, but I was in one, and there were about 6 of us from Roxborough that worked there. And people where we were at that time, a lot of them went there to get good jobs. You know, there weren't any jobs where we were. And the Richmond people always teased us, you know, they'd say, North Carolinians got the 3 R's, reading, writing, and the road to Richmond. And I had this boss, he was a good guy, and he liked to say this all the time. He liked to say it when people were around. He'd say, Jim, you know the best thing that ever came out of Roxborough? And I'd heard him say, I said, yeah, I know. He said, Jim, the best thing that ever came out of Roxborough was an empty Greyhound bus. It's a good place to have been from. You know, I grew up there. My father was an alcoholic. He was very functioning. Never knew him not to work. You know, drank every day, but never knew him not to work. Of course, he worked for himself, so it's a little easier to be a good employee when you work for yourself. But he always functioned pretty well. And my mom, I never heard her talk about drinking or alcohol. I don't know anything about her history, but she had a gambling problem. She was a compulsive gambler. Of the 2 maladies, gambling is probably a lot worse on the family than the drinking was in my case. When you got a family that kind of lives on the edge to start with, gamblers can just turn the world upside down very quickly, and that happened to us a lot. And I used to describe my mom. I love my mom. She's been dead and gone a long time, and my dad. I hope they've forgiven me, and I've forgiven them. But I described my mom and said, one week she'd be making me go up to the local haberdashery and get some new suits. I didn't have any place to wear a suit to start with. Get some new suits, and then the next week we wouldn't have any toilet paper or toothpaste. It's always just crazy. It's feast of famine. And I experienced some fairly serious trauma in childhood, physical and emotional. I don't go into a lot of it. I'm one of the few people in the world that was ever treated for rabies under the old 16 injection in the abdomen method. But the result of that was I went through a period when I was a child, and I just felt this very deep sadness, and had these periods of unreality when I didn't feel like anything was real in the world. I think today you'd probably say it was PTSD or clinical depression or something, but there was no help for something like that. There was nobody to talk to. I never talked to anybody about it other than God. I didn't have a lot of terrible effects. I carried into adulthood a couple of phobias that had to be dealt with, and pretty successfully. But otherwise, I kind of grew out of it. That's the only way I can describe it. I worked really hard to be a good athlete. I was a good athlete because I worked hard, and that was important to me. And I had some good role models, like coaches and people, scoutmasters, and did a lot of things. In high school, I had a girlfriend, and she and her family were very positive influences on me. Really, I think my life would have been very different had it not been for that. My parents ran this cafe, a drive-in restaurant, curb service, little place, open 16 hours a day. We were open every day of the year except Christmas, and half a day Thanksgiving. And the whole family, we were just kind of like slaves to it. That's all we did was work. As soon as we were old enough to work, I was a curb hop when I was 8 years old. But one of the consequences of that was I just met a lot of people, I met people, and people liked me. And the police would come in there and get free coffee and free food if they wanted it. We liked having them there. And the local bookie would be there 2 or 3 hours doing his paperwork. My mom always liked that. And, building contractors. I guess got offered jobs all the time. I had some great jobs. You can never have better jobs than I had. I still would have to help my dad, but he let me work other places. And all that was a positive influence. And I guess at the conclusion of high school, I didn't get the scholarship offer that I wanted, which was UNC, actually. I ended up going to state. And I had another offer that fell through with a coach change. So I decided to go to military prep school for a year. It was free. I could play football at a freshman college level. And maybe I'd get bigger. That was my hope, that I'd get bigger. I didn't get bigger. And that wasn't a terribly pleasant year in my life, but I came out of it learning a couple of things. One was I learned that I had the potential to be an exceptional student. I had always been a pretty good student, but I had more potential than that, and I didn't understand it. And I also decided that playing football was a really hard way to work your way through college. which is what I was looking for. It was a really hard way for somebody like me. So I came home, stayed out of school, worked in the mill, textile mill at night, worked with my dad in the daytime, saved my money, got to see my girlfriend. She was still in high school till she kind of cut me loose. I outstayed my welcome there and got myself positioned, went to NC State. Middle of the year, I just went. I'd never even been to Raleigh before, let alone NC State, and to be an engineer. I don't know why I wanted to be an engineer other than the ones that I knew all drove nice cars. And some of them had nice houses. And I was good at math, so I did that. I got there, I immediately lucked into this incredible little business, picking up and laundry and dry cleaning in the dorms. And this guy turned it over to me, a guy that was graduating. And I got somebody to help me. I got this little business going. We get like 30% of everything, just making money like crazy. Got me a wholesaler's license. Started buying stuff wholesale, selling it to people in the dorms, all the things they needed, toiletries. My number one item was condoms. I often wondered what a lot of these guys were doing with them, but it's high profit margin. I think at the time they were $1 a dozen. I priced them depending on the desperation of the customer. So I ended up that year. I literally I couldn't spend the money I had. I literally could not spend all the money that I had. I mean, I ate at good restaurants and bought good clothes, and I just couldn't spend it. And then I ran into this guy I knew in military school, and he introduced me to fraternity life. And that was the start of the golden age of drinking for me. I think up until that time, starting in high school, drinking for me was like a wild and crazy endeavor. You go out on Saturday night, a bunch of guys, you get stumped, go to local dances, show your rear end, get into some scuffles, commit a little vandalism, and then talk about it for the next 2 weeks, tell war stories about it. So, it was a lot of talking, not an awful lot of drinking. When I got into the fraternity, that's when it all changed. That's sort of the beginning when drinking became part of who I was and what I was. And, for a guy like me from Roxborough, it was, associating with people above my social class, going out with beautiful women, sports events, going to great parties, listening to good bands, getting whatever you wanted to drink, and it's like I died and went to heaven. It was just spectacular for a while. So that was okay until I fell in love. All right, now I found the perfect girl, wanted to spend my life with her, and I was pretty clueless. We partied and have a good time, but I was really clueless to what I looked like to the outside world, what my behavior looked like, but she wasn't. And, she cut me loose, and she decided I wasn't a long-term investment. I know about it because I've known her, know people, we have common friends even today. And that sent me into my first alcoholic tailspin. I went into this mode where I drank all the time. I didn't go to class. I squandered my academic record. I went to places associated with people I shouldn't be with. I basically just didn't care. I mean, I was so rejected and devastated. And that phase of my career ended with I was out one night in a place I shouldn't have been with a friend, and we got involved in a barroom brawl, and I was beaten almost to death. Almost died from it. I was, spent 2 weeks in the hospital and broke all my facial bones. My sinuses were full of blood, damaged my eyes, looked like an alien. I remember leaving the hospital and there was some woman there walking with a little kid, and the little kid started pointing at me and crying, because I because I look so strange. Yeah, that should have been the bottom. That should have been the bottom. And I mean, I had squandered all the money I had, all the money I could borrow. I had just blown everything. I wasn't going to graduate. I'd missed too much school to graduate on time. I'd missed the whole recruiting period to get a job. And so I kind of had my first big loss from drinking, my first tailspin. And then I experienced my first recovery. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You know, I went back to work, got in summer school, worked hard, graduated, lucked into this fantastic job working for DuPont down in eastern North Carolina in a mega plant that they had there. I wouldn't have gotten the job if I had graduated on time. Just great. I got to live in Greenville, you know, which was East Carolina then was about 80% women to men. Lots of parties, lots of places to party, and basically I kind of fell into this this drinking style I would call work hard and play hard. You know, work hard during the week, start on Friday, start drinking on Friday, sober up on Sunday afternoon, get through a little hangover Monday, and back to work. And that was always my default. When I got into trouble, I always defaulted back to that. Ultimately, I met my wife, met her in September, got married in January, had a baby in August. I mean, I pulled myself together then. I'd been through a bad period. I went through a period of using amphetamines and drinking, and had some really bad experiences, but you know, that motivation kind of pulled me back. Work hard, play hard. Did good with that for a while. And changed jobs, went up to Richmond to work for Philip Morris, which is now Altria. And I just got into these cycles, you know. I'd do real good for a while, something would get me going, get a promotion or something, work hard, and then, you know, over a period of months it would deteriorate. It would be not just a weekend, it'd be Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and then it would be, well, how about Tuesday? And I would deteriorate ultimately, and then something would happen, and I'd kind of start the cycle over again. And I was working in Philip Morris in the glory days, I guess you'd call it, for that company. That company doesn't exist anymore, actually. It was busted apart, or all of the diversification that was done was undone. And I financially, I made out on that because stock prices went up. But it was kind of sad. But it was the glory days. You know, the baby boomers were young. We were all young. We had young families. We partied in the neighborhood. We partied after work. We partied at work parties. The company, we had 5,000 employees in Richmond. The company was diversifying. We made big brands of Marlboro, which everybody knows, Virginia Slims, Benson and Hedges, Miller Beer, Miller Brewing. We made Miller Brewing a huge success. 7-Up, Kraft and General Foods, Kraft Cheese, Oscar Mayer Weenies. Second biggest chocolate company in the world. Had this huge international business. You know, we paid people a lot of money, had a very diverse workforce. Everybody wanted to work there. People in the city loved us. And, you know, and it was kind of exciting. But I mention it because it enabled my drinking, really. You know, pretty much everybody I work with drank to some extent. Abnormally. We go on business trips. That was just like a binge. You know, I went to Europe one time for 10 days and got home, and I couldn't even describe to my wife where I'd been because we drank so much. And it was kind of, you know, get a little better, get a little worse. Kind of classic bear market graph. The highs got lower and the lows got lower. And they just kept getting lower. You know, it might seem like things turned around, but they didn't. I ended up one day, this is kind of where it all ended. I guess this is the best way to describe it. I drank on just an average day with nothing happening, not bar hopping, not going out, blah, blah, blah. I drank 20 to 22, 24 beers, somewhere in that neighborhood, or the equivalent in hard liquor. I smoked 5 packs of cigarettes a day. I drank 12, 15 cups of coffee to keep going. Typically, I'd sleep 3.5 hours, maybe 4 hours, good long periods with very little sleep. I'd hallucinate sometimes. Dead people would talk to me. God talked to me one time. I don't know what that was, who that was talking to me, but I don't want to hear from him. Again, it was pretty scary. And I had all these physical problems. I had blood sugar problems. My liver was in distress. I had a constant irregular heartbeat, chest pain from the neuritis. It was just flowing all around my body. I had gastric problems. And a bunch of other stuff. I'd go to the doctor and they'd start talking to me about death. I ain't like that at all. I never wanted to die. But then I got hit with the tactical nuclear weapon, extreme anxiety syndrome, when I would suddenly believe that I was going to die. So I know some of you have experienced. I'd be absolutely convinced my death was imminent. I might be in the car, I might go to the emergency room, sit out in the parking lot. Sometimes it would happen and going to work, and I'd stop at the Hardee's I went by. I'd get out and I'd go inside and stay for half an hour till it passed because I didn't want to be alone when I died, And you'd think when you had this happen to you enough times and you didn't die, you'd figure out that you weren't going to die. But that's not the way it works. I always believed I was going to die. One Tuesday night, I went out and got drunk. Nothing happened much to me. I was at work the next day, and I'd had these panic attacks. And I went to this 9 o'clock morning meeting, and I had another one, and I just got up and left. And I went home. I got the Yellow Pages, and I opened it to alcohol. I started looking for something that might be near me that have something to do with alcohol, and I found one near me, and I called them, and I said, I need to talk to somebody about alcohol. And the woman put me on hold, and she came back and said, well, Dr. So-and-so will see you tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock. And I said, no, you don't understand. I have to talk to somebody now. If you can't talk to me now, I've got to call somebody else. So she put me on hold, and she came back and told me how to get there. I came in, I spent 3 or 4 hours there, and this guy was really great, listened to me, gave me this book to read called I'll Quit Tomorrow. It's a book about alcoholism and for professionals, really. And I went straight home, read the whole book, cover to cover. Went back to see him the next day. Got you a spot in a 30-day program, St. John's in Richmond, Saturday. You'll be going Saturday morning. I got to go to work Friday and tell the boss I'm getting ready to disappear for 30 days because I can't handle alcohol like the rest of you, with no warning. I knew it was going to hurt me career-wise, but I was still going to do it. And I said, okay. And the guy says, it would be nice if you didn't drink. You didn't drink last night. Maybe you wouldn't drink tonight. Why don't you go to an AA meeting? And he got the schedule out, and he found me a meeting on Thursday night. And I went to that meeting. This was June the 12th, 1985. And I went in and out of the house and smoked cigarettes. Going to that meeting was just something incredibly symbolic about it, about having to do that. But I made it there, and I met people there. They introduced themselves, and I didn't know anybody there. And they talked about something. They read some things. I mean, I could guess what they read, but I didn't know. I couldn't bet my life on it. They talked about something. I don't know exactly what they talked about. But somewhere in the course of that hour, unbeknownst to me, at some point in that hour, my entire life changed. My entire life changed. You know, everything that I'd struggled with, everything that seemed impossible, at that instant became possible. Everything in life that seemed to always get worse, started to always get better. And I am just so profoundly grateful for it today. You know, I just did, you know, I started out in this program, I just did what people say, don't drink, you know. Go home and ask God to keep you sober. Ask Him in the morning to keep you sober, and call me in the morning, or go to a meeting with me tomorrow, or go help me set this meeting up. And I was so desperate, I just did it. I didn't expect to be happy by being an alcoholic or anything. I started to be relieved of the pain of the alcoholism. And I've done the deal pretty much the same way ever since then. I hung around for a while. I had 2 home groups for a while. I did the jobs I was asked to do. You know, I was an intergroup rep. You know, I chaired a committee at Richmond Intergroup, which is kind of a typical urban intergroup, for 5 years. Became a GSR. I got involved with several other people. We started a whole new AA district. Got approval and recognition as a new district. I did all the jobs at the district level, including DCM. I did that later in Moore County, thanks to Steve M. over here. He drugged me into it. I never intended to. Kind of, it's all his fault. It was good for me. I had, before I left Richmond, I guess my passion was, we had this beginners group that the group ran. So kind of what you guys do. I mean, I know when you started yours. And we'd have, 20 to 50 people. Always had people pretty much at their first meeting. And a friend of mine and I, we sort of facilitated it. The group kind of decided we had to keep some control over it. And we watched people get sober, and I'd be a temporary sponsor. That's all I'd ever agree to do, is help people get a start. And it was just my passion, for probably 10 years before I left there. And I still view it as one of the most important things I ever did in AA. For my 30th anniversary, I went back to Richmond. I went to all the meetings I went to the first week. And I went to the first meeting I ever went to, and believe it or not, there were people there that remembered me getting my white chip. That had been there that long. And everywhere I'd go, I'd have people say, "Jim, remember me? I got sober in the beginners group. I've been sober 15 years." And I'd be amazed. Amazed at the power of Alcoholics Anonymous. And, I guess what I've learned over this period, if I kind of think through what's been important about the program itself, is I think with people coming in, and for me, the main thing was always not to drink. To come in and find every conceivable tool that people have to offer not to drink. And get to that point where I just accumulate a little bit of sobriety, and then doing that, then all of this stuff starts to soak in. I start to understand, all the stuff we talk about, God and higher power, and turn it over, and, whatever. But I didn't understand any of that in the beginning. I just wanted to stay sober, and I always encourage people to do that. Use every tool. And some people describe it different ways. Trust the process. As Jeff says sometimes, trust the process, let it work. It'll work, but there ain't nothing gonna work if you drink. If you don't abstain, it's not gonna work. And it just really worked in my life in ways I could never express. And I think that the other thing that's been important to me in the long term, and I heard it described by a reading, grapevine reading, by a woman that read it. And she said, in her life that all forms of progress in her life had to be preceded by spiritual progress. So when things weren't working right in life, you work on the spiritual part, and that pulls the rest up with you. Get a little spiritual growth, pulls the rest up with you. Get a little more, pulls it up. And certainly I see that work. You know, I think, for example, people early into the program have a tremendous spiritual growth spurt. I mean, it's remarkable. You know, to hear somebody come into AA in this pitiful condition with their life in such a mess, and a month or two later they're talking about all the stuff they're grateful for, how grateful they are, you know, for what they've got. And sometimes I want to say, grateful for what? You know, you ain't got a job. You know, your wife is left and you're grateful. And I think that's indicative of this whole process. Get spiritual growth, and then everything in life starts coming up with it. Then the wife and the job and, you know, all the relationships, all this other stuff gets pulled up. And I've sort of practiced that. I've never been able to push it the other way. I can't push it along, I just have to pull it. So when things are not going exactly right, I revert to that. What can I do to my spiritual life? You know, for me, it's mostly 10th and 11th and 12th steps. You know, I kind of work it all together. It's all one process, and to me. And but I look outside of that too. You know, I carry meditations around on my iPhone. I've probably got 30 of them. You know, I'm willing to try anything. I've had periods when I got something out of religion, was interested in religion, and I'm not anti-religious now, but wherever I can seek the growth, I seek it, and that's pulling my life up. You know, I just never could have dreamed when I came here I'd have a kind of life I was going to have. I sort of accepted I was alcoholic, and I couldn't drink, you know, but I didn't envision ever being really happy. So the program's a great gift to me. I view it that way. It was offered to me, and I accepted it, and I take care of it. You know, protect the gift. So I promised you a 10-minute tutorial. It'll save you a lot of time and effort and study. You can do the study if you want to. And Jeff, is at least one of my history group members here. Now, you know, I don't like sounding like I'm lecturing on this. I don't fancy myself an expert. In AA, I hate the whole idea that anybody is special or an expert in anything. But there's a perspective I want to give you, you know, that I figured out from a fair amount of effort. Now, alcohol is. And drinking's been around as long as mankind has been here. I mean, we evolved with the ability to metabolize it and detoxify it to some extent. And through most of history, it had a utilitarian value to people, safer than drinking water for most people. Nobody died from cholera drinking beer. They died from drinking water. It was especially valuable if you traveled on voyages, water fouled, and alcohol didn't. It was a cheap source of calories, had food value, didn't spoil, didn't need to be refrigerated. And it gave people who were living a very harsh existence the same little lift that it gave us, you know, that kind of warmth and feeling of well-being and whatever. You know, it was valued by people, always valued by people. People that settled this country brought their habits with them. Alcohol completely acceptable early in this country. Acceptable to church, acceptable on the job. Kids could drink it, no problem. Essential to the Army. Absolutely essential to sailors and sailing. A lot of it was homemade. Settlers, Americans developed their own alcohol. The German immigrants started the beer industry. Still, beer companies still carry their names. In Boston, they started importing molasses and made their own rum in Boston. And settlers kept moving. They developed corn whiskey and bourbon and moonshine and taught the Native Americans to drink and screwed a lot of them up in the process. Did a fair amount of damage, still totally acceptable. But throughout all the history, there's been some percentage of people that have a problem with alcohol. It was always, that percentage always caused the trouble. And that was controlled for a long time by religion and law and just being agrarian, being in small communities. And drunkenness was contained, but they were always there. And I'm going to call that 10%, the 10 percenters. I'll tell you why it's 10% in a minute, but why I think. But it's plus or minus. It varies by country, by period. But we'll call it 10%. And that's you guys, the 10%. In case you haven't figured it out. You're the 10%. And the country went through periods when alcohol use, production grew, huge amounts. And that grew, the 10% grew. All right. And when the 10% grew, the reaction to it was very virulent with temperance movements and prohibition. The peak of alcohol use in this country was probably in the 1830s. Several times what it is today, most people think. It was a temperance movement. By 1850, there were like 10 or 11 states that outlawed alcohol in response to it. Civil War washed it all out. All that turmoil washed all this interest in alcohol out. And so you start another one that ends up in 1919 with Prohibition, 18th Amendment. Big temperance movement, Prohibition. Prohibition didn't work, did away with it. 1933, on my birthday in 1933. Great Depression washed it out. A third of the population unemployed, and y'all are spending all this money to enforce laws you can't enforce, giving up all this tax revenue, letting the bootleggers and the smugglers have it, washed it all out. And all through that period, in the whole history, there were always people that tried to help alcoholics. Not a lot of them, but a fair number. There were hospitals and asylums and crack cures. There was the idea of one alcoholic helping another, of groups of alcoholics supporting people in abstaining. There's not anything that we do in Alcoholics Anonymous today that wasn't done historically at some point. But the problem is that none of it worked for any length of time. Never had any staying power, whatever. So you get up to when AA comes into existence. At the end of Prohibition, nothing was done to help alcoholics. But essentially nothing other than just a few little hospitals like Towns Hospital. The reason's obvious. Prohibition solved the problem, right? Take the alcohol away, you fix the 10%. And keep anybody from reaching the 10%. But you know how that works. AA comes about and people are really hungry for some sort of help. And these two guys sort of stumble into this deal of, let's trust a power greater than ourselves. Let's learn to trust God or something above ourselves, and that helped. And let's help another alcoholic. Let's take this message and help another alcoholic. And those things working together really started working. They got people very slowly got people sober. They got people sober. They took it to other places. People tried different things. They, experimented. Everything that kept people sober, they kept. Things that got people drunk, didn't have to worry about. And wrote these traditions, these crazy rules that we say we go by, and we do go by. So this thing spreads everywhere, mushrooms. And right up to date, here we are, tens of thousands of AA meetings. Anywhere I am in the world, I can go to an AA meeting, and I don't have to do anything. All I got to do is just figure out how to get there. Get on Google Maps. I come here tonight, the meeting's set up, you got a place, you pay the rent, you know, somebody leads a meeting. All I have to do is just come. You know, somebody's done it all. You know, the people in jails this week, they'll have a meeting there because you guys go there. People in treatment facilities and detox, there'll be AAs there to help them because you guys go and help them. And so I guess the point, the thing that strikes me is, of all the things that can be wrong with you, you know, alcoholism is a deadly disease. It kills a lot of people. We're the only illness, if you want to call it that, where the people that had to solve the problem. We solved our own problem. Us, the 10%. Maybe we were the ones that caused all the trouble, but we solved our own problem. And we maintain and administer, I don't like to use that word, but we administer this program. It's the only thing that's ever had any staying power to help alcoholics. And admittedly, we don't save every life. You know, I mean, I wish we did, but nobody else is saving them either. We're trying. And I'm kind of like the guy in the old country song. I can't remember who did it. You know, some girls don't like guys like me, but some girls do. I'm the some girls do man. You know, you come here wanting to stay sober. If you do, I'm here to support you. We're here to support you. And I think what I try to remember in doing service is, you know, I'm part of this solution that the 10% came up with for the 10% and worked miracles. I mean, it's, you know, almost everybody here can stand up here and tell you the same kind of thing I tell you tonight. It's very powerful. And I guess I need to quit a minute or two early. I'll tell you one. I said I'd tell you why it's 10%. I'll give you a lot of statistics, so I'm going to give you one you're going to remember. The 10%, us, drink 75% of all the alcohol produced. The other 90% get to split what's left. All right. The average, those of you that come into AA and wish you could be like the other drinkers, let me tell you about the other drinkers. The median drinker, the person right in the middle. I'm right in the middle. Half the people drink less than me, half the people drink more than me. That's what Beth wants to be. Wants to be the typical drinker. You know what they get to drink? One drink every 3 weeks. Now you can save it if you want to. You can save it up, maybe have a six-pack somewhere during the year. But that's all you're going to get if you just want to be average. You know how many drinks we get in the 10%? 74 drinks a week. That's the average. That's my kind of partying. Now we in mentality. Hell with that one drink every 3 weeks. I mean, you crazy. So the 10%, yeah, it's plus or minus a little bit, but it's pretty close. I'm happy with that one. I'm okay today to be in it. You know, I'm happy in it. I think this program is so remarkable and so different. You know, at my age, you know, looking back on my life, I'm not only grateful for what the program did for me, but I'm grateful just to have been a part of it. You know, be able to say that, you know, hell, I was in AA. You know, I was part of this deal that saved all these lives and changed lives for the better. Okay, hopefully you heard something that makes sense to you, but if you didn't, just keep coming back. Thanks.